you started your podcast over a year ago, and you've learned a couple of things along the way about podcasting. You even mentioned that some of the things are becoming more fluent. So really where I want to start is, like, Katy, if you were launching a brand new podcast with just the knowledge in your head that you've learned along the way, what are some things that you would make sure to do or do differently than the first go around? What would you do now if you were launching?
Yeah, great question, Adam. So I would say the first thing is kind of figure out what I wanted to do with guests straight out the gate so that I knew. And then I put a workflow in place, which has been amazing. I have an intake form. It asks every single guest the same questions, and it slates me for rolling into their intros and getting them set up for the recording and getting the media out to them. And I should have been doing that from the get-go. Before, it used to be like, hey, Adam, you want to be on my show? Cool. What do you want to talk about? And then it was just a lot of back and forth. Now I can hop in a group where I can meet somebody and say, hey, here's a link to the landing page. It tells you all about my podcast. And right on that page, you click apply to be a guest, and boom, boom, boom. It's so seamless. And it literally takes me like 6 minutes to get a guest outline slated and ready to go with links and everything.
So when they apply with your new intake form, the application to jump on the podcast, it might take them more than 6 minutes to put in all the information, but it takes you 6 minutes or less to know exactly what to do.
Yeah, I would say on average, it takes people like 12 minutes to complete it. Now, that's given that they know what they want to talk about. They have to have some sort of expertise, because it says, what topic do you want to discuss? And what are 3 to 5 questions that I can help ask to keep the flow of the podcast going? So I have had a couple people stumble on that. They'll be like, well, I don't know what to talk about. And so that's why I created the landing page to say, here's the people that I serve. Here's what I do. And then they can kind of vet it themselves to see if they're a good fit. It's a little more of a hands-off approach.
Okay. So you got a landing page and it says who you serve, like who is the perfect avatar, who's the listener. And I think that's really smart. Like, somebody who's launching a podcast right now, here's an issue that I see all the time. Most of us don't understand who that avatar is ourselves. B, even if we do, we're horrible at translating that to the guest who's coming on the show. And what that seems to do is people come on the show and their first thought is, I need to self-promote. I need to make sure everybody knows what my website is. I need to make sure to wiggle in a story about a client. And they are thinking a lot about themselves, and they're not always thinking about who is your perfect listener. And I know that when I go on somebody else's show, I always ask, like, who's the listener? What are they worried about? So I can really understand that. And then cater each of the answers to questions toward how to serve that person. So it's not coming across just as self-promotion. And so one thing that you've done is you've gotten that right up front. So they go to the landing page, they read about this, and then they apply. And it helps them to be more focused on your listener and hopefully less on themselves and what they have to promote. Is that part of it?
Yeah, totally, Adam. And something with that is beneficial, then I'm not rejecting as many people, because I'm not like, hey, Adam, unfortunately, like that doesn't fit with what I want to talk about. And I think it enables people who may not be avid listeners or even listened at all to Ginger Biz. They can still step in and be an extension of me and help promote the overall message that I want to share.
Let's talk about the title of the podcast, and let's talk about your perfect listener. So you identify the perfect listener, and I love that you put it on the landing page. Could you take a moment to share with me and our listener who you normally have listening and kind of what they're going through and what you help them with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that my average listener is probably 30 to 35-ish, and they are 0 to 2 years into business or entrepreneurship, whether it's full-time or as a side hustle. And it's someone who has lots of ideas, but only has 2 hands and can't grow past their own knowledge base. So Ginger Biz, the podcast, comes in as kind of a pocket cheerleader, an encourager, and an advocate for here are tips and tricks that have worked for me. Here's what hasn't worked, but here's the solution. And just kind of putting it all together with very, very tangible things. I am a huge fan of being able to have solid takeaways when I listen to a podcast. And I know with like yours, in one of your previous episodes, you talk about how you help someone who wants to be on your podcast get everything in one spot. And that's awesome, because that's the kind of thing I want to hear. That's what Ginger Biz does. It's not these lovey-dovey stories of how we've been successful. It's here's 1, 2, and 3 things that you can do today to be successful and to grow your business.